Okay. Okay. Welcome to Movie Critic Discussion Night, everybody. We're going to be discussing, as you know, Harold and Maude, the 1971 cult comedy classic. Say that 3 times fast. Okay, so it's IMDb gave Harold and Maude a 7.9 out of 10, which is a very high rating. Rotten Tomatoes has them at an 84%, and the consensus from Rotten Tomatoes is Hal Ashby's comedy is too dark and twisted for some and occasionally oversteps its bounds, but there's no denying the film's warm heart, warm humor, and big heart. It was released December 20th, 1971, on a budget of only $1.3 million. And I was trying to find how much it made at the box office. If anyone finds that, I'd love to know, because I couldn't find the number. What I did find was that it apparently was under $1 million upon its initial release, because I was looking at Variety's lists for 1971, but it only came out in the end of December, so really not there. But for 1972 also. And it was under $1 million. So obviously it was a loser. But the New York Times had an article in 1983. And the headline was, "After 12 years, a profit for Harold and Maude." Now, the article noted that by 1977, there were people who had seen Harold and Maude more than 100 times. It played 92 consecutive weeks in Boston, 112 in Montreal, 2 years in Paris, and 114 consecutive weeks at a single theater in Minneapolis. And this I thought was a funny story. When Paramount Pictures, which released the picture, celebrated the end of the movie's second year at the Westgate Theater in Minneapolis, frustrated moviegoers who live near the theater carry placards begging for any change of program other than hardcore pornography. So let's see. Psychiatrists have spoken of the fairy tale wish fulfillment of what keeps bringing people back 10, 20, or 50 times. They said it's a timeless, immortal mother figure who leads her grandmother figure who leads her son into life, and the barrier of a subconscious, anxiety-provoking incest theme. On a simpler, conscious level, it is a conquest over death, with Maude leading Harold out of his depressed fascination with dying. So that's a little background on the cult status for it, which I'll get to in a minute, because it did make several lists as cult favorites. Now, I wanted to mention 2 people in particular responsible for the movie. First, the director, Hal Ashby. Anyone familiar with Hal Ashby's work? Some of his other films? Okay, Amy and Rebecca. Okay. Well, anyone want to say what you thought might be his best movie? If you're familiar with it. Well, I can give you his top 5 that I think are his top 5 or 6. Obviously, this being one of them. The Last Detail with Jack Nicholson from 1973. People remember that? Maybe his finest, Being There with Peter Sellers. Shampoo with Warren Beatty, which was also a good one. Coming Home with John Voight and Jane Fonda, also a big Oscar winner. He also served as the editor for In the Heat of the Night and the Thomas Crown Affair, and that led him to his directing career. Unfortunately, Ashby died before his 60th birthday, he had pancreatic cancer that rapidly spread. Longtime friend Warren Beatty had advised him to seek medical care after he complained of various ailments, including undiagnosed phlebitis, but it was too late. Let's see what else. Oh, Bound for Glory was the other film I was going to mention. That would probably be among his top films. Let's see. There was a documentary in 2018 made about him called Hal that was screened at Sundance. And there's a book called Being Hal Ashby, The Life of a Hollywood Rebel, that in 2009 came out by Nick Dawson. Now, the writer, and this is another interesting story, Colin Higgins, who went on after this to write Foul Play with Chevy Chase, Silver Streak with Gene Wilder and Richard Pryor, and 9 to 5, which pretty much everyone has seen, I'm sure. I have more on him. Where is that? I'll have to find that. I thought I had it here. 1 second. Thought I had it here. All right, I'll get to it. Because there's more on Colin Higgins. Because he wrote this film as a 20-minute movie for his college thesis, UCLA or USC, I forget which. And then it got seen by a couple of people, and the right people got to see it. And it got turned into obviously a feature-length movie, which Paramount somehow approved, because this is not a major studio type release, but that's got to be a story in itself, but I didn't see that. Now, first, I wanted to get a show of hands. Who liked the movie? Hands up. Okay, most of you, not everybody, but most of you. Okay, good. All right. And for those who didn't like the movie, can you say why a little bit? Rebecca, Ben, got to unmute. You're still muted.
Unmute. Okay,
There
can you hear us?
Go ahead.
Well, I think movies are interesting in itself, because it really depends when you see a movie, at what's going on
In your state of mind.
in your state of mind, at your age. It has a lot to do with a lot of different things. I didn't think this movie was funny. I mean, Ruth Gordon is terrific and he was good. I didn't really, it's just not my kind of movie. I didn't care for it, and I didn't like almost anything about it. Katz had some good music. I like that. But maybe at a different time, at a different place, I would have liked it. My daughter told me when she was 18, she saw it and she loved the movie. And okay, well, I didn't see it at 18. And
I think that's about the time I first saw it, actually.
So I mean, it probably took on a whole different everything. And so for me, there was... timing mostly? I think it was timing. I think it's all about timing.
Okay. All right, Ben?
Yeah, that's basically the same thing we were talking about together.
Okay. All right. For those of you, pretty much the rest of you who liked it, what was one of the qualities you really liked about it the most? Anyone want to raise a hand and pop on? Yes, Blanche. Just got to unmute.
Right. Okay. Yes. Just the fact that Ruth Gordon was so amazing.
It's great.
She's such a marvelous, marvelous actress. And this was such an unusual break in the style for her. I just found it fascinating. And we never did see much of anything of Bud Cort ever again.
I'll get to that in a minute. Yep, I'll get to that in a minute. Okay. Someone just before, actually, Rebecca, you mentioned Cat Stevens. So the song "Don't Be Shy," right in the beginning of the movie, had the great lyrics.
Right.
Love is better than a song. Love is where all of us belong. No wonder he's in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, right? The lyrics like that? No, all right, I'm kidding. I'm being snarky. No, but I mean, he's obviously Peace Train and Fathers and Sons and several other songs. He's got a lot of great songs. I just thought those lyrics were pretty trite right in the beginning of a movie, but it's okay. Now, Ruth Gordon. Oh, and actually, Cat Stevens had a cameo in the movie. So I'll cover that in a little bit too. There's a whole bunch of trivia on this movie. So Ruth Gordon actually started out, well, she was acting since she was like a young kid, but she co-wrote the screenplay for Adam's Rib in 1949 and won an Oscar, a Primetime Emmy, and 2 Golden Globes for acting, plus 3 Academy Award nominations for her writing, which I never knew. Her first major role was as Mary Todd Lincoln in Abe Lincoln in Illinois in 1940. She was nominated for an Academy Award and a Golden Globe in 1965 for Inside Daisy Clover, which I'm not at all familiar with the movie. Anyone familiar with that one?
A little bit. I think
Okay.
It sounds familiar.
All right, and then I remember her in Rosemary's Baby, where she won an Academy Award as Minnie, playing a very evil person, if you remember that movie.
Right.
But she was terrific in it. She also was nominated for Best Supporting Actress for Lord Loveduck in '66. So for Harold and Maude, she was nominated for a Golden Globe for Best Actress. She won an Emmy in '75 for Outstanding Single Performance by a Supporting Actress if you remember the TV show Rhoda, the spinoff from Mary Tyler Moore, she played Carlton the doorman's mother. And she was nominated for an Emmy for that. And also The Great Houdini in '76. She won an Emmy for lead actress in a comedy series for 1979, Taxi. In Broadway, she was on Broadway for 60 years, ending in '76 with Mrs. Warren's Profession. She was also in Ethan Frome, A Doll's House, The Matchmaker. She was nominated for Best Leading Actress in a Play for that. Now, Bud Cort, and I want to show you something. Let's see if I can do the screen share here. Oh, I hope this works. I thought I had it here. I'm not seeing it now.
Did you prefer viewer?
No. Darn it.
Don't
I
mind.
had it here. Not seeing it. Darn it. Okay, let's do this. Okay, 1 second and let me find that, because wait till you see this if I can find it. Here we go. Okay, here we go. Yeah, here it is. Okay, now I should be able to do the screen share and you will see what Bud Cort looks like today. Here we go. All right, brace yourselves.
Ooh,
Bud Cort at what now is about 70, 71 years old.
that's scary.
Yeah. Okay, so there was an article on him in The Guardian published exactly 7 years ago. He freaked out audiences with a bizarre turn in Hal Ashby's tender romance, then vanished after studio rows, weirdo typecasting, and a couple of car crashes. Our Alex Godfrey tracked down the star. So in the article, it starts off great. It's a fascinating piece. Bud Cort has just come back from Ringo Starr's birthday breakfast. He's known Ringo for a while. He says, he's a dear friend and he's my dog's godfather. Cort is, it's clear, a well-connected man. He's been in the film business for nearly 45 years, ever since playing the wide-eyed ethereal lead in one of the key films of the 70s, Harold and Maude. It's a film beloved by the likes of Cameron Crowe, Alexander Payne, and Wes Anderson. Judd Apatow and Leslie Mann adore it so much they call their daughter Maude. His career never topped it, though, and by his own admission, he's had a checkered life. And again, the article was called Harold and Bud Cort. Harold and Maude was a blessing and a curse. Raised in suburban New York, Christian education, Robert Altman gave him a bit part in MASH. And then in 1970, the lead in Brewster McCloud. A friend gave him the Harold and Maude screenplay, and after rereading it, he related to the macabre kid in search of a connection. All right, I won't go into that. For his audition, he walked into the room and Hal Ashby was the first person I saw, he remembers. Hal made me feel so warm and welcome. He said, this is Colin Higgins who wrote the script. This is Chuck Muleville who's producing it. And I just looked at all three of them and said, I'm playing this part. And Hal laughed and he said, I guess you are. He was equally confident on the set, leading to spontaneous moments such as the creepy shot in which he breaks the fourth wall and grins at us, if you remember that. He threw himself into the numerous staged suicides, telling Ashby he wanted Ashby to believe that he might actually go through with it. For the hanging scene, he says, I was so into it, I believed I was hanging myself to death. During a scene in which his screen mother, played by the British actress Vivian Pickles, tells him he's going to be joining the army, he slowly raised his middle finger, sucked on it, then held it up at her throughout her monologue. She finished and ran off the set, and then Hal said, oh my God, Bud, you can't do that. It was great, but she's pretty down. You have to apologize to her. Ashby later got Bud Cort to give the finger in another scene. And they grew close over the production. Now this is kind of crucial. After the film was finished being shot, Paramount took control of the edit from director Ashby. So Bud Cort went to a publicity meeting with the studio and told them he'd refuse to promote the film unless they gave control back to Ashby, who was devastated by this. And they did, ironically, which is kind of interesting. There was a kissing scene between Harold and Maude that the new Paramount boss, which was Robert Evans, if you ever saw The Kid Stays in the Picture, it was about him.
Yes,
Really good
great.
documentary.
Yeah.
Could we
So-
get him off?
So he,
You don't
There
want
was
to look
a-
at him, Rebecca?
No, let's
all right,
look
I'll
at
change
everyone
this.
else.
Yeah, he's kind of creepy.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
All right, so there was a kissing scene between the two that Robert Evans hated, so that they took out. But anyway, so it made Bud Cort sort of a little bit of Hollywood poison when he did that.
But they never consummated. They never consummated.
Yes, they did. You don't remember the scene of them in bed together?
Oh, they
Yeah.
sure did.
Do I have to go and find that photo?
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah, they
I remember the
did.
scene, but I think they were just lying there.
Oh, really?
It was
was blowing bubbles.
post-coital bliss.
Yeah.
He had no clothes on.
Right.
Right.
Exactly. Yeah. So it was edited to just show that, but they wanted everyone to know, yep, and he was smiling a lot. So, and he didn't smile much, so it was significant. So he had a rough,
How old
rough
was he? How old was he when he made this film?
20. And Ruth Gordon was 74, playing a 79-year-old.
No, I thought he was 23 or something, but anyway.
20
I
when the
want-
film started. I think he turned 21 during it.
Hey, can I respond to Rebecca and Ben?
Sure.
One of the takeaways, I think, for those of us who are aging slowly, is that this film was in 1971, and she did herself in at age 80. She thought that was the end of life. That's when you do yourself in.
In a
Yeah.
happy time.
And that was how many years ago? That was 50 years ago.
Right.
Now 80 years old. It's only 3 or 4 years away from me. I'm not going to do myself in when I'm 80. I'm alive.
And she was,
Right.
very spry too, but she
Yeah.
felt it was
She
going to be
was
all downhill
fabulous.
there. So
So if you look at this film as a spectrum over time, I think in 50 years, human beings in this country are aging much better than they did in 1971. I think that's good news. I feel good about that.
Yes.
Yeah,
Exactly.
80 new 60.
And
And
the
it-
other thing that I loved so much about her was that she was really timeless. You
Right.
saw her initially, you're introduced to her and you say, oh, she's, an older woman, but she became more and more beautiful to me. She just had such a young spirit, and you really started to understand why, well, maybe, maybe this makes sense a little bit. Well, not really, but I just thought she was beautiful, really. I think.
Yeah, me too, me too.
And she was
I
a
mean-
concentration camp survivor, which
Yeah, and
explains
they never-
why she didn't talk about her husband, and also about why, her motivation to be so vibrant, I would think.
Well, she was great, great.
Went into that.
I was just
all right, I had a little bit more on Bud Cort because his right after they finished filming, his father died of MS at 50, just as the shooting ended. And this actually brought Bud Cort and Ruth Gordon closer together. He said she was among the first to call him. And she said, well, honey, let me tell you about the day my father died. And suddenly they were like the characters they played. They were very, very close. And he said, she was one of the most important friendships I've ever had. She was a great woman. The next few years, it was tough on him. He had self-inflicted inaction. The film that made him, he says now, was a blessing and a curse. He was typecast, offered only weirdo parts. He turned them all down, including, and many of you were on this film discussion when we talked about One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, Billy Bibbit,
Oh, God.
which Brad Dourif got cast to play and kind of gave him a flourish in his career. He actually wanted to play the lead. He wanted to play the McMurphy character, and they were like, no. And then that didn't happen. And then later he came back and begged when he found out Nicholson was going to play the lead. He went back and begged for the Bibbit role, but Brad Dourif had already been cast. In 79, he was in a car crash, had many broken bones, a fractured skull, missing teeth, and a lacerated face. And then finally, he started getting roles in films such as Heat, Dogma, Pollock, The Life Aquatic. 3 years ago, however, which means back in 2011, he was in another car accident in which his arm was almost torn off.
Jeez.
And then he had another accident and his knee, he said, quote, fell off his leg and he had to learn to walk again.
Jeez.
Don't
That's
get
why
it.
you're in
Don't-
the movie.
Did he have an
really had it
addiction
rough,
problem?
yeah.
Did he have an addiction problem?
That wasn't mentioned in the article. You got to wonder, but it wasn't mentioned. As if he
Same
watched the
good
movie
looks.
recently, he said, no, but I'm so proud of it. I'm so lucky I had the break I'd been dreaming of. The material matched my life so deeply. It was like giving birth to an elephant. So now, oh, here it is. Colin Higgins, the writer. He wrote Harold and Maude as his master's thesis. Now, while working as another producer, Edward Lewis's pool boy, Higgins showed the script to Lewis's wife, Mildred. Mildred was so impressed, she got her husband to give it to Stanley Jaffe at Paramount. Higgins sold the script with the understanding that he would direct the film, but they did a test for him and they told him he wasn't ready because the test shots that he directed proved unsatisfactory. Ashby would only commit to directing the film after getting Higgins's blessing, and then, so Higgins could watch and learn from him on the set, Ashby made him a co-producer. So you got to give a lot of credit to Hal Ashby. That's pretty cool. Higgins said he originally thought of the story as a play. It then became a 20-minute thesis while at his film school. After the film came out, it was turned into a novel and then a play, and it ran for years as a play in Paris. So that was kind of interesting. Ashby felt the actress portraying Maude should ideally be European, and he had a whole list of these European actresses, including Lotte Lenya, and even Agatha Christie. Ruth Gordon indicated that in addition, she heard, well, a bunch of other people I'm not familiar with. For Harold, in addition to Bud Cort, Ashby considered all these promising unknowns: Richard Dreyfuss, Bob Balaban, and John Savage.
Wow.
Also on the list was John Rubinstein, for whom Higgins had written the part, and then up-and-coming British pop star Elton John, whom Ashby had seen live and hoped would do the music. What happened was Elton John turned it down, but said, you know, why don't you contact my friend Cat Stevens? I think this would be good for him. So that was because of Elton John that Cat Stevens got to do the music. Now, when it first came out, Variety in their review wrote that the film was about, quote, as funny as a burning orphanage.
Yeah.
There were other unkind reviews too, though most of them were positive. It didn't do well at the box office. And let's see, which one am I reading here? This is got a snippet of one I want to read for you. Oh, the BBC. Okay, this was in March of 2021. So this is recent. About breaking the taboos in the movie. It wasn't long before Harold and Maude would enjoy its cult revival, however, thanks to college campuses across the US with late night screenings. It also said perhaps it was its Nietzschean spirit and its call to live deliberately, thoroughly and exuberantly, or perhaps it was its satire of the American bourgeois and all its institutions, as it satirizes religion, psychology, the family, and the military. Let's see. Okay. During a walk through a field of daisies, Maude turns to Harold and says, I should like to change into a sunflower most of all. They're so tall and simple. What flower would you like to be? And Harold replies he'd like to be one of the daisies because, quote, they're all alike, unquote. Maude turns to Harold and explains the problem with his answer. Oh, but they're not. Look, see, some are smaller, some are fatter, some grow to the left, some grow to the right. Some even have lost some petals, all kinds of observable differences. Harold looks on the flowers in silence. His thoughts, which he once deemed immutable, now entirely demolished and reorganized by the principle of life itself. And then do you remember what the camera does? The camera pans out to an extreme long shot, and it's revealed that the field of daisies they're standing in is a graveyard, and the gravestones are all in a row identical. So a little irony there, in that he ended with the long shot, which usually you start with a long shot and with a close-up. He did the opposite to put the poignancy in with the cemetery. Okay, and Cat Stevens' song, If You Want to Sing Out, comes on. They talk a little about his soundtrack. All right. Anyone have any other comments they want to make at this point? Want to say anything? Not right now? Okay. The critical response, mixed reviews. Go ahead.
Fred wants to say something.
Yes, go right ahead.
I thought the very first scene in the film was so riveting and so captivating, and it went on for 5 or 6 minutes. He's walking down the steps,
Starting with the feet.
bell-bottom pants,
Right.
and then he hangs himself. I mean,
Yeah.
I didn't know. I mean, I had seen it before, so I knew what kind of guy, what he was obsessed with death. But I mean, that was so
Your mother
riveting.
just walks by.
It was like
Yeah.
someone giving a speech and getting your attention. It was an amazing start.
Right.
Yeah, I like that scene. It
Yeah,
was
that
so
was
Mother
good.
didn't pay attention.
Mother walks right by and goes on the
Right.
phone. And
Right.
you think, how
Yeah.
come she's not dealing with this? Okay, now I get it.
She's just
Right,
so
she's
used to it.
used
It was
to
just a
it.
little minor
She's used to
annoyance to her. Right.
That was good. That was good.
The opening is wonderful. It's one of
Yeah.
the best parts.
Yeah.
You
Right.
just don't know who that is and
Right.
what's happening, and you see
Yeah.
his shoes
Yep.
and how he walks, brown shoes.
Right.
And for an
Um,
older film, it was so crisp. The photography looked like it was, current. It was, especially in that scene, it just catches you right away.
That scene
Now,
is
I have
wonderful.
to find the line because one of the critics hammered the cinematography, which was John Alonzo, who's a master cinematographer. Oh, here it is. Here it is. Roger Ebert. Okay. Wait till you hear this one. His review was dated January 1st, 1972. He gave the film 1.5 out of 4 stars. He wrote, "And so what we get finally is a movie of attitudes. Harold is death, Maude life, and they managed to make the two seem so similar that life's hardly worth the extra bother. The visual style makes everyone look fresh from the wax museum, and all the movie lacks is a lot of day-old gardenias and lilies and roses in the lobby, filling the place with a cloying, sweet smell. Nothing more to report." Now, right after that, John Nesbitt from Old School Reviews wrote, "Harold and Maude marks the first time I realized that famed Pulitzer Prize winning movie critic Roger Ebert could be wrong." I thought that was
And,
great.
and can I
Yeah,
say
go ahead.
something? Wait.
Sure.
Oh, Court, what was his name in the film? I forget.
Court.
Court?
Harold.
Harold.
Well, Harold is
Harold
Bud
and
Cort.
Harold,
Harold.
he did look waxy and dead
Right.
in the beginning, but
Right.
as he fell more and more in love, his complexion completely,
Got pinker.
he became right, he
That's
became
true.
pink. It was wonderful to see that.
It was
That's
a real
true.
love story.
He has a
He was
baby
more alive,
face.
Right. So Harold and Maude, according to Vincent Canby in the Times, Bud Cort and Ruth Gordon both are so aggressive, so creepy and off-putting. So he didn't like it.
Yeah.
But now Nikki Patton in Martha's Vineyard Times wrote, "Understatedly hilarious. Cort and Gordon are a truly unique pairing, a must-see." And Greg Muskowitz from efilmcritic.com, "One of those films you just don't want to end." Ross Anthony from Hollywood Report Card, "Certainly a little twisted, but with such a powerfully warm 70s sunflower heart, Harold and Maude endears." And now Christopher Null from Film Critic wrote, "It's not quite a romance, not quite a buddy picture. It is, however, one of the quirkiest comedies, and its bleak morbidity is uncommonly matched by its over-the-top hilarity." I like that one.
Hilarious.
I didn't think it was that funny. I
Me
mean,
neither.
There were
What was
several
funny?
funny scenes, but
I
yeah.
think the only thing that was cute was when the police was chasing them and she kept
that was
spinning the car around, and I
All
thought
right,
that
I'll-
was
actually,
funny.
That
I'm
was
glad you
very
mentioned the
funny.
police.
That
Let me
was
get to-
really funny.
And then
But the
they
other-
hop on the motorcycle.
Right,
gonna-
right.
let
The
me get to
other
that,
thing
because
is,
That was funny.
Find it. Hang on, I gotta find it.
Okay.
Here it is. Okay, I'm gonna do a screen share, and I want you to see if anyone can identify this. Do you know who the cop was?
No,
Burt Reynolds. I don't know.
Not a bad guess from the profile.
It looks like
No.
Burt Reynolds. I
Right,
do. I
because of the
read who
mustache.
it was.
Who is it?
So it was credited as like a Jay Brannon or something, but it was actually Tom Skerritt.
Oh,
who
right,
we
Tom
just talked
Skerritt.
about
Oh.
Last month in
Right,
Alien.
because he was in it.
I was
Right,
wondering where he was. I saw his name.
right, Tom Skerritt.
So let me read you the little passage on that.
Right.
Because that was kind of a funny story. Here,
Right.
Tom Skerritt is credited as M. Borman, the motorcycle cop.
Right,
Skerritt
right.
says, "I was there when Hal Ashby received the script for Harold and Maude. It was Skerritt who suggested that Ashby cast Bud Cort, with whom he had worked in the movie MASH." So Skerritt had a small part in MASH, Cort had a small part in MASH, so he worked with them. And he said, "Ashby knew that this movie was way ahead of its time," Skerritt said. "It wouldn't be a hit right out of the gate, but it would become a cult classic. Ashby knew this from the first day." Skerritt's small role in the film as an authoritarian motorcycle policeman came about by accident when a previously cast actor broke his leg. His film credit reads M. Borman, a reference to prominent Nazi official Martin Bormann, whose post-World War II whereabouts were still unknown. I said one day that he probably came out to Oakland and became a motorcycle cop. And so that's the way they put it in.
That's funny.
He said, we were just messing around. We played it pretty loose back in those days. So Skerritt said that Robert Altman and Hal Ashby taught me how collaborative good filmmaking could be. These guys included everyone with ideas that came up. Their best work came from asking, how about this? How about that? And they were always willing to take that risk. They knew it was everybody's movie and they made you feel that you were really a part of it. So I thought that was pretty cool. As far as awards, the movie won. Golden Globe nominations for Ruth Gordon and Bud Cort for Best Actress and Actor. In 1997, the Library of Congress called it a culturally, historically, or aesthetically significant film and put it in there. And I can close the sharing now. The Writers Guild of America ranked the screenplay number 86 on its list of greatest screenplays ever in 2005. In 2008, the American Film Institute ranked it 45th on the list of the funniest films of all time and the ninth best
I don't know what
romantic
people,
comedy.
I don't know what people
That-
consider humorous. I don't know.
Dark humor.
Well, all his,
Quirky is one thing.
all his
humorous
dying,
is-
everything that he did dying was funny.
Right.
I don't know about
Um,
funny.
but-
Talent
to
to
me,
do all those.
You thought that's, but what about ninth best romantic comedy?
Oh,
No.
God,
Right? That's
no.
creepy, but that's what American Film Institute.
that's
Now,
ridiculous.
this one you may agree with. Entertainment Weekly ranked it number 4 on the list of the top 50 cult films.
Cult.
Yes,
Yes.
So that makes
definitely a
sense, right?
cult film.
Okay, let's see. Oh, so Robert Evans, the film studio head at Paramount, whose wife at the time was actress Ally McGraw, wanted the love scene cut. She didn't like it. And the husband, of course, tried to oblige his wife, but Hal Ashby furiously objected, saying, that's sort of what the whole movie is about. A boy falling in love with an old woman. The sexual aspect doesn't have to be distasteful. Ashby wanted to show the beauty of young and old flesh together, something that he knew the younger generation, the hippies, the heads, the open-minded masses would dig, but Evans said it would repulse most audiences, so it had to go. But in the end, you had the little scene where it was in, briefly. Vivian Pickles, who played Bud Cort's mother, brought her own clothes for Mrs. Chasen's wardrobe. She said, I had some of my own clothes over from England, which we had altered. And in the week before shooting began, I shopped endlessly for the rest of the costumes with the designer Bill Thies. And she wrote, he was spot on. He kindly raided his mother's jewelry box to borrow antique jewelry from Mrs. Chasen. Now, Colin Higgins, again, the screenwriter, had a guy who became famous later working for him as a carpenter, Harrison Ford.
Right.
How about that? Okay, let's see. Oh, one of the film's lost scenes that got cut involved Harold serving up his own head. It opened with a shot of a large silver-plated serving dish, Colin Higgins, the writer again, told Film Quarterly in '72. A hand comes in and removes the cover, and there, on a little bed of parsley, was Harold's head. 2 hands come into the frame and pick up the head, and we move back, and there's Harold holding his head and looking at it. He sort of peels off the latex blood and walks over to his bedroom chair where a headless dummy sits. He puts the head on the dummy, but the head isn't sitting right, and he goes into the closet to find something. Of course, that scene never made it into the theatrical cut.
Can I ask a question about the plot?
Sure.
All right, because things happen very fast. So are we all assuming the husband died in the Holocaust, right? Is that what Maude's
That's
husband?
the assumption. And from what I
That
read,
happened-
that's a logical
That happened
assumption.
very, very quick where they showed you
Yep.
a number and,
I think I missed it.
I missed that.
see, everyone missed it. That's right.
You missed her
Forearm.
tattooed number on her arm.
Yes, I missed it. I missed that.
Yeah.
I probably fast forwarded.
Right, they showed it.
No, I missed
Was the
it.
She
number
didn't put
there?
it there.
No, but was the number there, or was it tried to be blanked off? Because it looked like it was white without numbers. It looked like it was
It was
taken off.
faded.
No.
It was just faded because, it was like,
Faded.
at that time, it was what, 30 years
25
ago?
years later.
Okay,
Oh, I
Um,
missed it.
so let's see.
I read it online. but I
All
missed
right, so now I
That's
can,
cheating, that's cheating.
no, it's fine. I want people, if you get info, that's cool. So here's some of the trivia of the movie, going back to the concentration camp tattoo. I don't know if you heard that thunder, but okay,
Oh my
still
God.
going. All right. Now, we only see it for an instance. It's something a lot of people miss the first time they see the movie, and this writer wrote, I did. Since we also learned that Maude grew up in Vienna, and she said, quote, but that was all before, unquote. And from that, you think we're supposed to infer that she grew up Jewish in pre-war Austria. Now, there's a whole lot of other people who weighed in on this, and they said the shots of Ruth, oh, this is different. Ruth Gordon driving the hearse. So you remember Ruth Gordon driving some of the cars?
Yeah.
She can't drive. She never learned how to drive.
Right.
So all
But
those
that's all right.
scenes-
She looked like she can't drive.
Well, all those, yeah, even the way she was right. But they were towing the car with her behind the wheel,
Oh,
off camera. Okay.
can I bring up something?
Yeah, I want to get back to that tattoo because there's more to it, but I got to find it. But all right, yeah, go right ahead.
So I swear, when the mother was fixing him up on these dates, I thought she referenced that it was a computer dating service.
She did a couple of times. Yep, she did.
Were there computer dating services in 1971?
Wow.
That-
that's-
Good,
I
that's
mean-
really good.
I don't
Yeah, I thought
recall
that too.
computer, I mean, 1971, computers were personal computers, and anybody who was accessing the computer.
I know.
Actually, there
really in
were.
its infancy.
Yeah, there were, but they were huge computer. I
But
mean,
they were big
I was taking
mainframe
computer classes in college
computers.
years later, and
No, there
You never
were,
would've thought
because
we did.
I did it once, and it was in the 60s. So I know there were, because I got matched up with somebody I already knew. So I know they had it. I
Wow.
forget what it was
did.
called.
Fred Kogan.
No,
Wow, that was pre-Fred.
she didn't want
Kogan.
me. She didn't want me.
I didn't realize they had computer
I
dating
know, right?
back in the early
Yeah.
70s, and I was,
You know what?
I was very confused.
I was at Bell Labs in Summit at the time, or in Jersey, and they had a computer with a wall in between it, and you can do a video conference. So it was in the early 70s. I don't remember exactly when. And this is what we have with FaceTime and what we're doing right now.
Wow,
So
good.
that was pretty interesting. I thought that. So they probably did have it.
Wow.
You
All
probably
right.
have to have those big DOS cards and
Yeah.
XXO.
Oh,
Yeah.
well, also, Ed, there was a scene with her and with the babushka, and then she did look more like she was, in Europe during that
Yeah.
time. It just took on that look to me.
Right. All right. I found what I wanted about the tattoo. Okay. When Maude talks, all right. I got to go back a little more. I don't know if you remember her mentioning Dreyfus. Maude briefly mentions Dreyfus, and she was talking about, oh boy, let me see if I got it here. Okay. They're in San Francisco Bay watching a beautiful sunset. Maude sees some gulls soaring overhead. Her joy reminds her of a story that Dreyfus had once written about. Some background here. Dreyfus was the famous French Jewish army officer unfairly accused of selling military secrets in the late 1800s by fascist nationalists. He was arrested, put in prison on Devil's Island in French Guiana. Zola published the famous and fierce denunciation of the military, J'accuse. Dreyfus was imprisoned in solitary. Anyway, later on, written Henry's They Only Been Seagulls. There's a pause while the Cat Stevens music swells a bit, and Maude explains to Harold, for me, they will always be glorious birds. Now, when Maude talks about Dreyfus and the seagulls, what happens immediately before she says it? Harold notices the tattoo. Observant as she is, she notices that he notices it. He doesn't know what to say about it. Harold and Maude is a movie that can offer you new insights viewing after viewing. And I remember about the 10th viewing, I suddenly gasped and got chills during the seagull scene when I realized why she starts to talk about Dreyfus and Devil's Island and the seagulls right at that moment. She's addressing Harold's unspoken question about her experiences in the concentration camp. She's really talking about herself and the attitude that she brought to the concentration camp. Later on, he realized that they had only been seagulls, but to me, they will always be glorious birds. Seagulls are a symbol of freedom, and she is telling Harold she was able to keep her mind free and joyous, even in the worst circumstances. That's a level of depth I had no idea about, but I thought that was kind of
It's a big
interesting that
jump.
somebody posted about that. Okay.
Ed,
Yes,
about Cat Stevens, and I think David knows a lot about this. It's ironic that this had a Jewish theme to it because Cat Stevens changed his name. He converted to a Muslim religion, and I believe he became frankly anti-Semitic and actually was banned from travel to the United States after 1976.
which
So
he
that's
said
pretty
wasn't true.
He's
but
back now, yeah.
It's questionable. Yeah, it was questionable. I read some stuff that was kind of both sides about whether he's really anti-Semitic or not. Now we know Roger Waters from Pink Floyd is totally anti-Semitic. He's very public about it, but Cat Stevens was a little more sketchy on the details. So the hearse, I want to get, you remember the Jaguar hearse? I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was great.
That
I
was
loved
great.
it. So cute.
Yeah, all right, here we go. I'll do
Yeah,
this.
that was great.
So I thought that was kind of cool the way they did that. It was a 59 Cadillac Superior 3, his original hearse, three-way model. That's one of the most sought after hearses among collectors. The Jaguar hearse was really destroyed at the end, and no replica exists because they only constructed one version for
Oh
filming.
my God.
So I thought that was kind of interesting.
They could.
Recreated.
Now let's see the movie connections. Okay, Harold and Maude was referenced in Quadrophenia, Scavenger Hunt, Full Moon High. There's something about Mary where Mary tells Ted her favorite movie is Harold and Maude, and Rushmore. Thought that was kind of cool. Okay, so Cat Stevens' cameo. He was the hitchhiker that Harold and Maude pass on the road when they had the tree.
Yeah.
sticking up
Yeah.
in the back of the
Yeah.
book.
Yeah.
So they passed a hitchhiker. That was Cat Stevens.
Major
Ah.
part.
Yeah.
Right. And then let's see. Most people probably don't know this. During the first funeral scene in the church, when Harold and Maude first meet, she says, "At 85, you're just marking time." Then they walk out the church door and the marching band is going by. The leader of the marching band blows on the whistle 3 or 4 times, which in marching band terminology is called marking time.
Mm.
Oh.
The person who wrote this, I learned this little tidbit when I dragged my mother to the movie back in 1982. She used to be in marching bands. I first saw the movie in 1980 as a 15-year-old. To say it changed my life would be trite and an understatement. I've seen it no less than 40 times and introduced at least that many people to it over the years.
Who's that?
That was a
Who?
woman named Shastine Keeney.
Oh, God.
She just posted it, so I
Yeah,
found it.
she should find something else to do, I think.
All right, let's see.
No, but
Okay, I mentioned that to you. And what's this? So Colin Higgins, the writer, he died of AIDS in 88.
That's not.
Which, you know,
Come on. that was-
it appears he was gay, and that may be why he wrote the character of Harold to be someone, you know, outside of the mainstream society. Let's see.
Harold's face looks like he's really young, but his clothing was so old, I couldn't figure out how old he was. I mean, they say he's supposed to be 19, but his face doesn't look like a 19-year-old. He has a baby look about him.
Yes, he really did.
But his clothes are so grown up that he's tall, so he can't be that young.
It's actually.
Can I ask a question? What does everybody think of the ending?
I was going to get to that,
Okay.
but
Fred already
go right
spoke to
ahead.
it. He didn't like the ending,
Hey,
Fred.
wait. Surprise.
When they filmed it a couple years.
Who didn't like the ending?
Fred already spoke to it. The age, checking out at age 80 is a bit too early for the East Point crowd.
Okay, but what about Harold? What about how the movie ended with Harold?
And he's sad, and then
life,
he
comes out.
starts
Where's the
playing
light?
the guitar, and he dances off. He becomes she gave him
Well,
the
he sends
gift
the
of
car over
life.
the cliff.
I was
Right,
really
yeah,
surprised.
That's the end of the morbidity that he
Oh,
was.
right.
Was he in the car?
What?
Was
No,
he
he
in the
walked
car?
away.
No,
He
because
was in the
car,
car
yeah.
after.
you see
He
him
was-
dancing off, playing.
Right.
the-
Thought he was in the car, right?
Yeah.
It's
He
like
set the
everyone
bar
thinks
off.
he killed himself, but he didn't.
He
No, but
became
then this was-
happy.
But at that time, this is like an ode to life. This was like bringing him, she was a gift, like a phenomenal gift to this depressed poor guy, poor rich kid. Like she brought him back to life. He was dead.
Right, that was his old life that he drove off the cliff, you know.
Exactly. He was burying it in the hearse. Exactly. That's the way I looked at it
Yeah,
too,
the whole
David.
life. That's a good way of putting it.
Yep.
Goodbye.
Here's the
thing with-
correlate. Here's the corollary quote. Why do you?
thing
Why does
with
the
Huck-
group? Why did Maude go to funerals in the beginning? I mean, you can see why Harold went to funerals, but why do you think Maude went? That's where they met.
Celebrating
Why did Maude go to
life.
funerals? What's that? What do you think?
Maybe the concentration
That's what I
camp thing?
thought, yeah.
Yeah, I thought because she never really got to go to the funerals of all those people that died in the concentration camp, like the Daisies, all those people died and they were all different, but they were all thrown into the ditch. So I thought it was all
Right.
wrapped up in that.
I'll go with you, Anne.
Thanks, anywhere.
Yeah, me too.
I like that. I mean, I also thought
I like
she liked
that.
celebrating life, and it helped remind her that she's alive and living, and to celebrate it. I thought it was a reaffirmation for her of the living who were there. But I think you have a great point as well.
Can I-
Hal Ashby, sir, go ahead.
Yeah, so we all said that she killed herself because it was her 80th birthday, but she was also that was the best her life was ever gonna be. I mean,
Right.
she just had sex with a 20-year-old boy and she was happy and she really didn't own anything. I mean,
She wanted to go out with a
no, she
bang.
went out on a high. I mean, that's what every athlete wants to, after Super Bowl, she wrote
She
up.
wanted to go out with a bang. Yeah.
Right,
You
so
like that, Marcia, eh?
it wasn't so depressing. I guess people think it's so depressing. It's not that depressing. She went out on her own terms,
Exactly.
Yeah.
She went out on her own terms, which, given that she was in a concentration camp and couldn't control circumstances
Right.
then, this was a way she could take control of
No.
how she ended.
Sister.
And
Right,
she
so-
couldn't create a different kind of life for herself. That was her life. So and I agree with the control. I mean, she
Right.
couldn't create something else. She was actually damaged, very damaged.
Sounds like you did like the movie, Rebecca.
No, I did not.
You're coming around.
She watched it
Trust me,
twice.
I didn't.
I'm gonna have
Yeah,
to
you're
watch it.
changing.
But she loves life.
Yeah. Yeah. And it does bear watching more than once because as here people do miss things. Now, okay, so Hal Ashby, the director, had a cameo. When they went to the amusement park and there's the model train going around, he was right there watching the train. Not a big deal, but he popped himself in sort of Hitchcock-like. And then there was a review by a Shane Butner, who wrote in Sound and Vision magazine in 2012 that the characters in the movie are charming, quirky, and even inspiring. This is an anthem against conformity and a freewheeling kick in the ass of a movie that's lost none of its peculiar magic over the decades. Its bittersweet ending, hey, it was made in the 70s, still gets you in the cardiac muscle. The Cat Stevens soundtrack is perfect, and Gordon and Court are astonishing in making the impossible work. Director Hal Ashby made two other truly great movies of the era, 1973's The Last Detail with Jack Nicholson, and Peter Sellers' final masterpiece, Being There. But the high wire act here is an absolute miracle. And then in Entertainment Weekly's calling it Why Harold and Maude is one of the top 10 cult movies. It has all the fun and gaiety of a burning orphanage, began Variety's review. So let's say that this chocolatey comedy made of sweet dark humor confected with an eccentric center is an acquired taste. But connoisseurs will discover a supremely endearing love story. Bud Cort, his sad eyes as round as his head, is Harold, a lad given to crashing funerals, tooling around in a hearse and staging elaborate faux suicides. Ruth Gordon plays Maude, a coquettish and bubbly 79-year-old celebrant of everyday pleasures, birds, trees, Grand Theft Auto. To the wistful tune of Cat Stevens' soundtrack, she gets under the armor of his cultivated morbidity with her daffy joie de vivre, and the two make an evenly matched odd couple. Signature line of the movie, Harold says, "You sure have a way with people," and Maude says, "Well, they're my species."
What?
That to me was
That
the
was a
funniest
good
line.
one.
They're my species.
That's good.
So that's it. That's what I've got. So
What are the other 10
Great.
cult, what are the top 10 cult movies?
I didn't check that list. I'm sorry. I just saw this was number 4. I'm curious.
Rocky Horror.
Yeah, we'll have to
Yeah,
find.
Rocky Horror.
Rocky Horror's gotta be number 1, and maybe even Clockwork Orange would be up there too.
Yes, yes.
Maybe hairspray.
Hairspray would be a good one, yeah.
Uh-huh.
And maybe,
Bye, Birdie.
what was the,
I'll Google it.
Hedwig and the Angry Inch would probably be up there. Something like
I
that.
just wanted to say, I thought the Cat Stevens music really, really made a big impact. on
Me
it.
too, me too.
Most times, you know, you
Yes,
hear
I
these
watched it.
soundtracks and the songs on the soundtrack are never even in the movie, you know, they added so much to every scene,
I
scene.
agree, I
So we're
agree.
gonna have a list and watch it.
There were 2 songs he wrote specifically for this movie that didn't appear for many, many years later on any other records. You had to get the soundtrack to this album to get them, but then Cat Stevens put them on some collection, or his
Oh, okay.
record company did many years, like 20 years later. So, so that was it. So that's it.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Good job, Ed. Ed, I
Very good.
apologize, Ed. We are in the middle of a horrendous move, so we didn't watch the movie, but we're gonna watch it with all your ammunition now. We have a
All
lot
right,
to
well,
look
I'm
for.
sorry, unfortunately,
Yeah.
there's so many spoilers, we can't stop that because we're discussing it. So, yeah.
Well, it's gonna be fun. So
Yeah.
thanks.
Where are
Ed.
you moving?
Sure.
We moved from Philadelphia to Margate, New Jersey.
Oh, wow.
And then we still have East Point, but we had a condo and we rented in Philadelphia. We got rid of that. So now we're in Margate. We took all our junk here, all the clothes and everything. And I can't find a place for everything.